go.
Welcome, everybody. It's great to be here at Cannexus. We're here to talk about scaling virtual career development on 3 campuses, and we'll talk about courses, programming, and co-op. Today's intentions really are for leaders from 3 campuses. We'll review how digital by default is really leveraging new technologies to augment human capabilities and the power of building trust, engagement, and connection within our remote offices and our interventions, and how they've changed our practice and really increased outcomes. Thank you. What I'd like you to think about is this cost, access, quality triangle, which we all struggle with because we have more needs and fewer resources. So we're going to walk through this to suggest to you, if you want to go ahead, Mark, that the cost is really lower. We've got to get costs lower for our services. We've got to build in more quality. We're asked by our administrators to get deeper and better outcomes. And we've got to access and reach more clients. And we think we can do that this way by approaching gamification, using more and more peer-to-peer support technology and self-directed activities. And you may know that we've been working with a game called Who You Are Matters, and you can see how many students it was reaching, but then digital by default changed everything. So we've also looked at some other tools like the Online Storyteller, and then we've also looked at Conversations Matters, an outgrowth of that. In addition, we've seen the power of something called Use Science we'll talk about, as well as a wonderful tool called Type Coach. So as we proceed, Mark will begin by talking about his work at the University of Toronto. Jayne will talk about York University, and I'll come back and finish up with things we're doing at Colorado State University. So Mark, we'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Rich. So I'm happy to talk about embedding narrative assessment and the tools that Rich was just talking about into credit-bearing courses and other programming at the University of Toronto. And I've also been involved with 2 other projects that I'll mention briefly towards the end. I've been teaching at the University of Toronto for about 5 years, together with Rich, co-founded One Life Tools, lead a team of career practitioners at Career Cycles, and host the Career Buzz podcast. So let me just say a little bit about why qualitative and narrative approaches are a good fit for now. And really, there's a growing interest in storytelling, story listening, narrative approaches, and a general trend away from scores that you might be familiar with, traditional assessments that try and numerically help people gain some self-clarity, through to narrative and stories. And so this is a more constructivist and narrative approach that many have thought about and written about: Amelia Brott, Mark Savickas, Mike Stapleton. And the evidence base is growing for storytelling and narrative approaches. We ourselves have published 3 outcome studies on the narrative approach. The 2015 one in the Canadian Journal of Career Development really was our first one that showed the effectiveness of this approach. So how does it work, and how can we reflect on stories and experiences in an organized way? So I like this quote from John Dewey: "We don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience." And well, of course we do learn from experience, but where is the structured reflection? Where are those opportunities to consider your jobs, your volunteer activities, your educational experiences, co-ops and internships and other experiential learning? And how can we reflect on that in an organized way to unlock the career development value of those experiences? And that's what we've tried to do, building a framework or a model, using a kind of a structured approach where the input are all these stories from our clients, their experiences and their rich narratives. And on the output are well-informed choices for the future. And what is the black box in between? I found that a challenging question from an engineering background that I have. I feel like I've been able to think about this problem from a systems point of view. And we came up with a kind of system. And I'll just briefly give you the overview, because this overview is the framework for the courses and curriculum that I'll talk to you about. So really, again, on the left side, we see people's stories, their early years education, work, volunteer, travel, recent past, and the future of periods of stability, cycling with periods of change. And people have questions: what's next? and they want to make well-informed, good choices moving forward. And the process moving from questions to choices is a two-step approach. A clarification drawing on the narrative, resulting in a clarification statement that we've had thousands of people write, and then using that as input into an intentional exploration of 3 or 4 future possibilities, whether they're jobs or careers or educational possibilities. And using this simple approach, we put it together in a more structured framework or a roadmap. I'll show this to you in a minute. I won't go in all the detail. Some of you who've heard me speak before, we talk about this, but really it's a roadmap for helping people take charge, become empowered, and proactive, because many people just are reactive in their career and job search when it comes to making career and life choices. And you see here, we have our step back into career and life clarification, and then 2 steps forward into the intentional exploration. And along the way, we use the stories to generate future possibilities, build a sketch, a clarification sketch that people can use to gather and organize what they learn about themselves, distill it into a short statement that is present and future oriented, and then prioritize a few possibilities for intentional exploration that helps people then watch for clues and take inspired action to find that choice that they want to move forward with hope, confidence, resilience, and optimism. So how we did it and what we embed in these courses and curriculum were storytelling activities. It used to be, before the pandemic, that we could get together and have an interaction with groups of 4 people. You saw Rich earlier showed you a slide of what that looked like. And we called that experience Who You Are Matters, and people gained clarity through interacting with their peers in a self-directed, organized, structured approach to reflection. Now, that's part of a narrative assessment system. And I want to say this because it is the framework for the courses that we built, is that using a narrative assessment system to help students or clients gain clarity, get organized in their thinking, and get moving. And here is either the Who You Are Matters experience, or a little bit, I'll tell you a little bit about Conversations Matter, is the virtual option for this experience. Scaling into using a self-directed simulated coaching experience we call the self-directed narrative assessment, helping people increase their reach and impact, and letting us as faculty members or as program leaders reach more and more students, and then following up with individual or group sessions that allow people then to use the platform to explore the career options that they're considering. So we've used this with a lot of different people now and a lot of different institutions and groups. About 2,000 of the game kits are out there, and now we're into hundreds of, maybe even 1,000 Conversations Matter virtual event registrants, with people trained across mostly Canada and the US, but increasingly across the world. Over 7,000 people on the Online Storyteller. And mostly we've been trying to document this, and together Rich and I with many others have been publishing book chapters, and importantly 3 published outcome studies that I've mentioned earlier. So when we bring all of this together, how does it look in courses and programming? So we organized first 2, I'm going to talk to you about 2 things at the University of Toronto. So many of you know, in Canada, University of Toronto is Canada's largest university, approximately 90,000 students, the largest grad school in Canada. And one of the programs that we implemented is called Options. It is exploring non-academic career possibilities for grad students, masters, PhDs, and postdocs. And this is offered through a unique institute within the Faculty of Applied Science and Engineering called the Institute for Leadership Education in Engineering, or for short, ILEAD. ILEAD has all kinds of programming, including courses, credit-bearing courses, which I'll tell you about in a moment. This was a non-credit-bearing experience that included 9 2-hour live sessions. And importantly, it embedded these 2 tools that I mentioned to you for clarification. We did a Conversations Matter experience I think it was meeting number 2 of those 9 meetings, where students would all participate in this 90-minute experience resulting in that clarification statement. They would all then go and use the online storyteller through self-directed narrative assessment on their own, and they would come back to meeting number 3, where we would kind of take it up, use what they got out of it, the conversation guide, and then move forward in the balance of the program with those possibilities in mind and with the future possibilities to explore for their next steps. Along the way, they got a one-on-one meeting with a career coach. Mostly that was me, but other resources, meetings with a professor. And then importantly, you see this peer success team. We taught a number of grad students how to support their peers using these tools so that they in turn could lead both Conversations Matter and the one-on-one meetings with their students. So if people want to have a look, there's the link to learn more about the options program. So that was non-credit bearing. There was a credit bearing course in the same iLead Institute called Engineering Careers, Theories and Strategies to Manage Your Career for the Future. So I've been teaching this for about 5 years. It's a credit bearing course, mostly for grad students, masters, PhDs. And it is completely organized around that narrative framework. There is first learning about the uncertain world of work, and then we jump right into clarification as one of the themes, many activities, including Conversations Matter. Theme 3 is then intentional exploration. How do I explore those possibilities? And then number 4 is putting it all together for themselves and their future. The syllabus that is created for this, I've now shared with many others. So yes, this is for engineering students, but no, it's not just about engineering students. If you teach biology, or if you partner with a faculty member in the English department or philosophy or anywhere, you could biologify this syllabus, or you could Englishify for those students. It embeds these tools to give students a structured experience. And importantly, again, to try and prove that this works, we conducted a qualitative outcome study. Last year, Mike Stebleton and I published his interviews with students about how that course changed their perspective on the whole aspect of career. And the one sentence summary that I'll share with you is that students walked into the course thinking, what am I going to do with my life? I want to have one answer and, sail off into the future with that one answer. And what they came out saying is, I don't know what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, but I've learned to be more confident and ability to make a small next step, even without knowing how all of the dots connect into the future. I personally have been measuring increases or changes in hope, efficacy, resilience, and optimism. Every class I do a pre and a post-course survey, not from a scientific point of view, but just helping students understand their own changes in their psychological capital. That's the hope, efficacy, resilience, and optimism. We found a 14% increase from before and after the course. I also measured clarity from before and after, up 83%, and organized thinking, how organized you are in your thoughts about that. Should universities have credit-bearing courses around career management? Listen to Thaksha. She was a student, a grad student in the course, and let's see if I can just give you a quick 30-second video of Thaksha speaking about this.
Hi, my name's Thaksha. I think career management courses and guidance in general is super important. I don't think a lot of institutions place that much of an emphasis on networking opportunities and guiding their graduates toward a career. And I think that needs to be more of an emphasis in order for universities to stay competitive, because there are just so many options for young people, and I think students or potential students will opt for universities that do place an emphasis on careers and career management.
So that was a student from the course. This is the credit-bearing course, Engineering Careers. It's not easy to get a course accredited in a university, and many of you watching this might say, wow, that would be really nice. And boy, it is nice, I got to tell you, and it was very hard work to get that accredited in the institution. But if you're in career services in any college or university, you are probably partnering with faculty members. And I would really encourage you to think about how you could bring a 1 or 2 session program into a faculty member's course so that you could effectively embed, guerrilla style, embed useful career development activities into faculty members' courses. And I think that is something that's much easier to do at the start. Finally, I'll just mention 2 other really interesting programs I've been involved with at 2 other institutions. And they're notable because they're scalable. Conestoga College is, many of you know, it's a college in Ontario with 3 campuses, 44,000 students. And they had a kind of mishmash of career development courses across their institution. And one of the leaders in the institution says, we needed to streamline this. And so there was a movement to get curriculum down into 4 courses offered across hundreds of different courses, and embedding these career development courses right into their programs. One of the people I've co-presented with, Lisa Bowman, she put curriculum together and embedded this really excellent series of courses across, now over 5,000 students have gone through this programming. And when it was safe to do so, it embedded the Who You Are Matters game experience. And then also students would then utilize the Online Storyteller for structured reflection. And so this is now probably one of our best scalable stories. And I was deeply involved with Lisa building that. And I actually taught one of the sections of that course at the Guelph campus, which was a real eye-opener to see how somebody else was able to embed these tools into their programming. And finally, I'll just mention one other thing. I've collaborated with Penny Freno at Simon Fraser. Of course, they're using many of the narrative approaches in their career and volunteer services, but Penny also integrated this into a continuing education program at SFU for people 55 plus considering their next adventure. And what we did there was we again embedded these tools, the Storyteller for structured reflection, into a 6-week online course for adults in transition. And Penny now has run this a number of times. So just to give you a sense of the versatility of a narrative approach that can go from credit-bearing courses to non-credit programming, to elements of a course like at Conestoga and continuing ed like you see at Simon Fraser here. So let me stop there. That was a lot. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jayne Greene-Black.
Hi, I'm Jayne Greene-Black, and I work at York University, the 3rd largest university in Canada. But I do not work in the Career Center. I work in student accessibility services, working with students with disabilities. We do have a very holistic approach, which involves reflection and engagement and networking. And so yes, let me tell you a little bit more about how we went digital and how we use these technologies to build engaging conversations at a deeper level. Next. So most of you know that students with disabilities have a lot of strengths, but of course they also have some additional barriers to navigate. And so one of the reasons that Student Accessibility Services has implemented career development into our services is to assist those students with navigating these barriers. Next. And so when we moved digital, like most of you, we didn't get a lot of notice about how we were going to move a lot of in-person services to a digital platform. There was a lot to be done. We were primarily an in-person service. I saw students one-to-one. I ran in-person workshops. The credit course I'm going to talk about was in person. I run a very holistic career mentorship program. And that involves a lot of networking, to Thakshya's point, a lot of connection with people in the community who came to the campus, and lots of opportunity for happenstance to occur. And now we were faced with so many digital options and quite the shock actually to the system about how we're going to move everything online. It was a steep learning curve for me. I'm a digital immigrant, not a digital native, but nevertheless, we did the best that we could. And so when we take a look at the preliminary feedback, we were very encouraged. Yes, some of the students had difficulty basically stopping in-person classes on a Friday and going digital on a Monday. And there were some students who struggled with that. But at the same time, there were students who really appreciated the convenience of no travel. We're a commuter university, and some students actually travel 2 hours each way to get to us. So their feedback about liking digital means of communicating included some of the things that the slides are showing. So in addition to being able to now book their own appointments online, we never had that option before, but we had to really step up to deal with the 5,000 plus students we have registered in student accessibility services. If we had to do all of their in-person bookings before, we weren't going to be able to easily do that unless we had an online platform. So that was a scalable platform that we created. And we embedded in, at the York University, we use what used to be called Moodle, is now called eClass. So we created a whole new eClass platform and put all of our 5,000 students in it, had various sections that they could take a look at to get content and be able to book their own appointments as well. So this was a new offering that we had that is scalable in this digital world. In the one-to-one meetings that we often did through Zoom, the students liked the ability to share their screen because sometimes they just wanted to show what they were working on and the screen that they saw. So they really did like this, but as we know, there were so many diverse options: email, telephone, Zoom, chat, that this online learning site I'm talking about, and drop-in in Zoom spaces. So it was a little chaotic, but at the same time, students were now offered new options. We didn't have an online chat before in our department. Now they had an online chat. Next. Okay, so the credit course, it is a 6-credit full course at York that we offer, and it's exclusively to students with disabilities. And it's not totally about career, but it is a team talk course, which asks students to be critical about what is a disability anyway, and what do you need to know about that? How do you learn with a disability at the university and beyond? And basically, I was doing the career module when the pandemic hit. So basically, on Friday, we were told to go home for 2 weeks, and we all know what happened with that. It's 10 months later, we're still home. I was told I was going to go home for 2 weeks, and then with 1 business day notice, I was going to take a 3-hour class that I was teaching on career, and I was going to have to do it digitally. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. So Mark is going to controlling the slides, so he's going to bring up a number of them so that I can share them. That's good. Stop there for a sec. And basically, this was, in Mark's terminology, a reflective-based course. Like, we do believe in the importance of reflecting on all of these things. What's a disability? How do you plan your career? What is systemic discrimination in terms of the world? What are the pieces of legislation? We want them to reflect on themselves and their world. And interestingly enough, and the topic that I was supposed to be dealing with on the first day of the class that during the pandemic was career planning in a VUCA world. And for those of you who don't know the term VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, I had that topic already set as my topic, and here we are talking about it all online, trying to navigate this digital world together. The other complication I had was I usually talk about the differences between psychometric testing and the pros and cons of that versus concepts related to career and life design, kind of 2.0, Evans and Burnett's work. And I had paper copies of the Strong that all the students had done. I had their answer sheets, and I had them at home. And 14 pages times 30 students, 420 pages, but no scanner. So I had a lot of complications. Okay, next. That said, I wasn't certain how it was really going to go. I wasn't totally experienced with Zoom. I'm still not a very fluent, but I could fumble my way through. So we were using a lot of chat functions. I had an educational assistant who was reading the chat for those who don't read, because remember, this is a course for students with disabilities. Some students don't read well. And so we had to think about accessibility functionality within this Zoom world as well. But interestingly enough, when I said to the students, how's it going? I asked them, like, what's your feedback? They said, I've never participated as much in my other courses as I have in this class. And they really seem to like it. Okay, next. one thing I didn't say in the course, if we just go back a slide, Mark, for a second, in the course, is that I did not embed the online storyteller into it. Like Mark was talking about how other universities have embedded it, like, and use it also in their career counseling functions. So St. Mary's and Simon Fraser University use this online storyteller, which is a digital platform, in their materials and in their career center work. I've certainly used the online storyteller in private practice, and the digital format of that particular program is amazing because individuals can work offline and leverage their time and your time by doing a lot of the work online. Resources are in that platform, that digital online storyteller platform, and it's holistic and it's reflective. So I would like to just put in a plug that it is amazing, but I didn't incorporate that into the course. I was just basically trying to keep my head above the water with this very rapid transition to online learning. I'm thinking about how I might incorporate some of these tools into future classes. I also didn't incorporate conversation matters, which Mark talked about briefly in his session, but I am going to talk to you about how I incorporated his preliminary vision of that. Rich and Mark put a lot of time and energy into creating this Conversations Matter tool that is now digital and can be used totally digitally. So now we can go to mentorship. My passion is my career mentorship program. It's strictly for students who are registered in student accessibility services, and it's a custom designed model. It's very emotionally and holistically based on concepts of the value of reflection, the value of networking, the value of synchronicity, the value of happenstance. Okay, next. So even though I had more time to prepare for career mentorship than I had to prepare for the course, I honestly did not have the, I couldn't make the decision about how to move this particular in-person heavy program to digital, because it involved one-to-one mentorship matches. The students put in an application. What is my disability? Why do I want this program? What do I want to gain? They set their intentions. How does their disability impact them? How is it a strength? And from those applications, I create one-to-one matches with people in the community who are involved. Maybe someone just wants to learn more about human resources, or they want to learn about how they're going to become a doctor with a disability. And so I'm doing these matches, and then they all have to attend a compulsory orientation session. Usually that was in person. In order to determine if they want to put in the time, because this was a time-intensive program. It involved in-person contact with a large learning community. I called it a learning community program, as well as their one-to-one match. You know, there were on-campus large group meetings that involved a lot of different activities. So there were table talks about specific topics that students could choose. There were presentations. And importantly, if you flip down the slides, Mark, the speed mentoring component of this program was the part of the program that often got the best reviews, because in the speed mentoring, the students could rotate between quite a large number of mentors, 5-6 minutes at a time. They could share their story, they could hear the mentor's story. And oftentimes their mentor match was fabulous, but they may have gotten feedback from another mentor that really catapulted their career planning in a way that they couldn't have previously imagined. Okay, so next slides, Mark. And there was a lot of reflection built in. So every time a student participated in a program, whether it's table talk, speed mentoring, one-to-one, they were asked to reflect in the e-class online system to share their reflections with other students who can then reflect on those reflections. So it had multiple levels of meta reflection. So what was going to work well for this? I talk about this program as a program for the heart, a program for the head, and a program for the feet. So the heart aspect is there's an emotional element to career planning that many of us forget. There's fear, there's insecurity, there's low self-confidence, there's confusion. And so a lot of people are reticent. So the heart, the mentors often encourage people. The head, they're giving them information. And the feet, sometimes they, you know, they're university students. It was even if there wasn't a pandemic, it's difficult to keep up with coursework. And sometimes when you have a disability, it can be even more time consuming as you use technology to convert material that isn't accessible. And so the question was, how are you going to help them actually take action in a busy schedule? So how was I going to make this program digital and maintain what I truly believe are some of the core elements of deep engagement? How do you leverage technology for deep engagement? And especially, the speed mentoring, because it had always been so highly rated, how was I going to manage that? Okay, so what I was fortunate to have was an education student this year who is just delightful, amongst other things, but she suggested to use Flipgrid. Well, I talked about maybe we could do videos, but she suggested we use Flipgrid, which was the most simple video recording technology that I have used, because a lot of our mentors are not digital natives. And so they're like, how do I make a recording and send it? Flipgrid made it so easy. And this education student combined all of these videos so that there were videos of all the students telling, this is who I am, this is why I joined, this is what I want, this is what I'm hoping for, and videos of the mentors, a mentor-only kind of Flipgrid video that said, this is who I am, these are my skills, this is why I want to mentor, this is what I can do. So the feedback from that, you can see in the red slide, don't go on yet, Mark, is that these people felt much more connected. The mentors, who some of them have been mentoring for 20 years, they said they love the videos because unlike speed mentoring where they're meeting all these people next, they couldn't remember who they had met, but in the videos they could review them. So there was actual digital leveraging to the videos. The other thing I did was use Conversation Matters. So Conversation Matters, I had fortunately had the privilege and honor of participating with Rich and Mark in Conversation Matters sessions that had taken place during the pandemic. And I loved them. They were enriching, they were engaging. And so I asked Mark if he would allow me to embed this. Okay, so next slide. Basically, there was only a paper copy. So right now, Mark and Rich are amazing. They're constantly improving their processes, and there was a digital version. But I used the paper copy. We can just go through these slides very quickly. It was sent to the participants in advance. They had to think about their energy level. I love the metaphors embedded in this tool, like, what's your energy? Are you a light bulb today? Are you crossing a river? Whatever the metaphors are that you incorporate. I just love that because it just takes you out of your word space, but then you reflect on why you chose those metaphors and you learn that people chose the same metaphor, but for different reasons. So let's just keep going. And then, so they did this in advance, and then there was time built into a Zoom large group session where I broke people into small groups. And I broke them into their breakout rooms on Zoom according to some commonalities. So they might have been interested in HR, one group might have been interested in psychology and social work, and another group might have been interested in banking. Okay, so next. So basically, I didn't leave enough time. So Mark and Rich know that they do this in 90 minutes, and I just didn't have it in my ability to kind of contain the earlier part of my meeting to allow enough time for the 90 minutes of Conversation Matters, which is really truly what I think it deserves. But nevertheless, you'll see in this feedback, now this feedback, many of you have used Zoom, many of you have used the whiteboard in Zoom. I love the whiteboard because it just gives you a minute to react right in the moment. You put up the whiteboard, everybody can put their comments down, they can put stamps. So that's why you see the heart. Some people just stamped that they loved it. You see that more time was required. So, but you also see that was memorable, amazing, empowering, short. Yes, it was short. It was too short, but they loved it. It was informative. It was fun. And they talk about how they were engaged. It was eye-opening and they learned about other people. The next slide. We do put evaluation in mentorship, but this year, because we went digital, there was a movement to have every program evaluated in the same way, every meeting. And so some of the questions in this evaluation weren't really totally relevant to my programming. Nevertheless, I had to use this tool. So students were asked after this meeting, why did you join this meeting? And this is, you can see here, they joined for social connection, building confidence, improving social communication, and discovering new skills. Well, what did they say? Were these objectives met? Some of these social connection objectives, why they joined the program? yes, 2/3 of them said they were completely met, which is kind of amazing considering it's a digital platform. 1/3 said they were somewhat met. Okay, so that's still pretty good. Nobody said they weren't met at all. Nobody said that they were only partially met. So it was great. What was the most significant impact? Exactly what this Conversation Matters tool is designed to do, and what my mentorship program is designed to do. Make meaningful conversations, listen to what other people have to say. I would just like to stop on that point, because too often in conversations, we're not listening to the other people. What Rich and Mark have done so amazingly well is they have designed a tool to ask people to listen to what the others are saying, not just be in their own head, and to be able to actually say to other people, I appreciated it when you said X. So that means they really truly have to listen. They can't just tune out and into their own inner self-thought. And you'll see in this feedback that listening to what other people have to offer is equally as important. So they actually honored that objective, which Rich and Mark, I believe you deliberately put that into this tool. They did find it great to meet the mentors. They found the social interaction was great. They loved meeting. Again, these are different people's comments. They met new people. You can see that they enjoyed being with talented mentors. And most of this meeting was taken up with Conversation Matters, a digital online tool now. It wasn't digital completely when I did it, but it's now digitally available. And it helped to break the ice. They found that it built connections. They're very thankful, keep going. And they found that, I'm looking up, so if my eye contact is weird, my slides are just up to the left of you guys. But what they found was they learned other people were open-minded, learning, growing. And this unexpectedness of that comment is really critical, because they said, you never know when something unexpected is going to happen. And they just look forward to the future and learning about everyone's reflections. So how do we virtually connect, reflect, and engage at a deeper level? Conversation Matters is one tool that can be incorporated. I'm hoping to put it in the course this year. And I'm hoping we'll find new ways to help people make meaningful connections. It's one thing getting information online. It's totally another making those reflections and those connections with people. Thank you.
Jayne, I wish I was in your class. You have such amazing energy. And Mark, thanks so much for giving us kind of conceptual piece of this. So let's go ahead and talk about this digital by default and how I was able to employ it at Colorado State University in a couple examples. So one of the great things that happened is I was part of a very large NSF grant with 16 postdoc students every year. And I was asked to give them a career development program, essentially. And these are people who are in life sciences and merging with data scientists. So these are really great big thinkers. And what I did was develop a program for the first couple of years, and you can see the interactivity and the level of content, the tools we were using. We're using what Who You Are Matters game and so forth. But then all of a sudden COVID hit. So what do we do with this digital by default effort? And you can see from the next slide that what I had to do was think about, well, let's take something called Type Coach. And Type Coach is an amazing addition to the literature in Myers-Briggs. But what I love about this technology is once you got your score, you could go and look at videos that were lifetime tutors to you. So what a great tool to add to this digital effort to provide career development. Another tool that we looked at was Youth Science. And Youth Science is really bringing back the whole language of the power of exposure bias and how to give people direct feedback about aptitudes. So what we did was take a look at a couple of the different tools. And Youth Science gives us information on these core drivers. And I'm just going to give you a couple slides. You can see in the bottom right the kind of activity it makes you do, kind of a brain game that gives you feedback about your, in this case, visual comparison speed. The next slide talks about your feedback relation to spatial visualization, kind of things that really drive your capacity to do well beyond interest, where your natural stints to get you into flow. And if you think about that, this interactivity then online, it's kind of a consumer model, lets you pair up what your interests are compared to those in that occupation, and then how your aptitudes relate to that and what aptitudes you have. So it gives you this interactive experience that we don't find anywhere else in any aptitude assessment program. What's cool is that you also get feedback about personal quality. So there again, you see the RISEC, because we do use the government's profiler, but also time orientation, your vocabulary, work approach, and your basically interpersonal style. And that gave these students tons of feedback to think about, where am I going? What's my next step? How do I do that? you can see that before COVID, we were playing the game in my house. We'd bring people over for dinner and they'd play the game and really get engaged in it to really clarify what they wanted more of. But that's all gone now because of that. So what we did is take this program we've heard about, Conversations Matter, and we put the students through it virtually, and they're finding tremendous success getting to know each other, networking, reducing isolation, and finding about what's next for them. So that's worked real well with this large funded NSF grant called GAUSI. The next opportunity was taking a look at, we did this on campus. We have all of these free sessions for staff and faculty during intersession. And we just recently played this Conversations Matter with them and got some amazing feedback about faculty saying, wow, with all this isolation, it allowed me to virtually connect with people and really think about what's next for me. How do we plug it in with students is our number one thing that we hear. And that was on CSU's TILT program during intersession for professional development. Another opportunity came to us, like, what if we took this from campus to international conferences? So we took Conversations Matter to the International Workforce Professional Conference and had all of the participants invited to this PDI, which they did before the conference. And it made such a connectedness between partners of the conference. It gave great juice to the sessions they would follow up with. So we're seeing lots of conferences approaching us saying, would you please embed Conversations Matter in our conference? And that was another way to deal with this whole notion of digital default. So what do we do about this? As we close out our session, we've tried to cover a number of campuses, 3 that talked about Toronto, York, and Colorado State, and how we did things around curriculum interventions and embedding it as best we could. So we'd like to offer you, if we've inspired you to think about how you can plug it into your campus, here are 4 leads we're going to give you. We want to give all of you a passcode to Conversations Matter, so you get to experience and think about how could you implement it in your campus. Secondly, we'll give you a free passcode to the Online Storyteller we talked about, which allows students to go through a 12-step process, video enhanced, to individually do this process by themselves or with a coach. Third, if you'll contact me, I'll give you a free pass to Type Coach and see this amazing tool that I think is really supplanting the Myers-Briggs and giving video access to all students the rest of their life. And then fourth, if you'd like to take Use Science, it is now free to all students. So if you'll write to me about that, I can send you a passcode and you can try it. That's our chance to try to quickly say to you folks, a lot's happening on campuses. We previewed 3 of them, and here's 4 takeaways we hope we've inspired you to consider using, and we'd like to provide those to you. So I'll close and ask Mark and Jane to just say a thing to kind of close out. And it's been a privilege to be here at Cannexus again this year. Mark?
Great, thanks, Rich. And thanks everybody for sticking with us and going through this presentation. If you have further questions on it, like, go to onelifetools.com, as Rich is saying on this slide, but if you want to drop us an email to gain access to Conversations Matter or get a credit, you can also email us at service@onelifetools.com, service@onelifetools.com. I hope everybody has a good conference. If you're watching this during the conference, I hope you have a great one. If you're watching it afterwards, let us know how it went, what you thought about it. Drop us a line, service@careercycles.com. Rich, Jane, it's been a real pleasure to co-present with you. And Jane, over to you.
Yeah, Cannexus is one of my favorite conferences. I'm really curious how it's going to go this year in the digital format. Another experiment in how we can connect digitally and also create some happenstance, some connections with people in more meaningful ways. So thank you for your attention, and thank you to Mark and to Rich for working together on this presentation.